My name is Miles, and I live in a small town in Georgia. Most of my life I lived in a normal neighborhood, but recently moved to a more rural area. The house that I'm in is around 45 to 50 years old, and sits on a good plot of land. I moved in a few months ago, and nothing was out of the ordinary. I lived with my mom, sister, and 3 dogs, so when I would hear something outside or an odd noise, I would chalk it up to just be one of them. One night, I just finished all my chores and was relieved to see my comfy bed. I fell asleep like any other night, but woke up around 2 in the morning to this odd noise, like someone calling for something. I grabbed my phone, then walked over to the window to shine my flashlight outside. Nothing, just our yard and the woods. Then I hear it again, this time more clear. Someone was yelling out for help. I got extremely nervous and took a step back from the window. I was about to walk to my mom's room to tell her, but I stopped myself. I waited to hear it again before going to tell her. With nothing for around 2 minutes, I went back to bed. When I woke up the next morning, I asked my mom and sister if they heard anything. Both of them said they didn't hear anything and slept like a baby. I brushed it off as my mind playing tricks on me and went to do some school and yard work. Night comes, and I'm letting my dogs run around in the backyard to use the bathroom and have some outdoor time before it was lights out. I was playing Clash of Clans on my phone when I realized I didn't hear my dogs playing or walking around. I looked up, and they were staring at something in a little clearing before you hit the woods. I looked in the direction of where their heads were and saw an outline of a deer. The deer was on its 4 legs, but just staring at me. I told the dogs to come in, and they didn't move a muscle. I kept yelling and yelling until my mom came outside to ask me what the issue was. I told her to look in the direction of the deer, but there was nothing there. The dogs were still staring at something, so I just pulled them inside and locked the door. When I looked out the window, I saw it again. This time closer. I locked every door in the house and headed up for bed. I woke up at around 2 a.m. again to someone yelling, but this time I wasn't the only one who heard it. My mom sent me a text saying, "Is that you?" To which I replied, "No." I listened very carefully to the yelling. This time it was saying Boone. Boone is the name of my youngest dog. I was so scared and ran to my mom's room to talk about what the hell was going on, when I froze at the door. I heard something walking outside under my window. I didn't move at all. I was basically pissing myself, thinking someone was about to break in. It's probably a good time to mention my sister was at a friend's house for the night, so it was just me, my mom, and the dogs. Whatever was outside walking around didn't sound human. It sounded like a deer or a dog walking around. My dogs sleep in my mom's room, so I thought it was that weird deer I saw earlier. Then the most terrifying thing I could think of took place. Boom! The sound of this thing was nothing like I've ever heard before. I ran to my mom's room and she was already on the phone with the police. I heard fast and heavy footsteps run from my side of the house to my mom's side. I closed the window and heard this thing scratch at the walls of the first floor. Then police sirens filled the air and this thing bolted into the woods. I looked out the window to see it and saw a deer on 2 legs. The police knocked on our door and got our statements. We walked around the house and saw footprints, scratches on the wood and windows, and even a piece of an antler. And when the cops left, me and my mom stayed up till dawn. 3 days later, I decided after everything that's happened to get a bunch of friends together and play some good old manhunt. Amazing idea, right? We planned it out for the following day. I didn't tell them about what's been going on because I thought it would make them not want to come over. Everyone got here around 4:45 p.m., and there was still a good bit of daylight, so we just played some football and some other games until dark. At 8 p.m., we prepared all our gear and other stuff and got ready to play. My team was the team that would be hunting the hiders, so we waited about 15 minutes and went into the woods with our flashlights. We found the first of the 4 hiders easily, but it was hard to find Odin and Kyle. We decided to split into teams of 2 to cover more ground. I was walking with my good friend Evan for around 5 minutes, deep in the woods behind my house. We kept walking until we heard something not too far in front of us that made us both stop dead in our tracks. We shined our lights at it, and it was Kyle, but he looked really spooked. He looked over at us and told us that we needed to get the hell out of here. And before we could ask why, we heard a branch not too far in front of Kyle snap. We all shined our light to reveal a man that had dark eyes. When I say dark, I mean like pitch black, no white to be seen. We ran so fast that I threw up when we made it back to my house. The entire run, we heard that person or thing running after us making this odd clicking noise. Everyone was already back at my house, and we told him what happened. Kyle then started telling his story nearly in tears the entire time. He said he was in the woods finding somewhere to hide when he heard someone say something in a whisper. When he shined his phone light at it, he said this thing had an unhuman smile and was staring at him with those black eyes. He then ran and hid under a log until he saw our lights and started walking towards us. We called it a night and went to bed, trying to forget what we heard and saw. Nothing else happened that night, but I still slept with the light on. I genuinely feel like I'm going insane in this house. I don't know what to do. I promise to update you guys if anything else happens, but for now, I will not be stepping foot in those cursed woods. What I'm about to tell you sounds pretty insane, but I swear it's all true. During the fall semester of my senior year in high school, about 14 years ago now, every night after dinner with my family, I'd walk my dog Jessie down the street to a small field near our house. 2 things you should know. 1. My house is situated on a hill, and you have to walk to the top of it and all the way to the bottom to get to the field. Lined with trees and lots of street lamps, so it's pretty well lit, but can still seem spooky at times. 2. Jessie is one of the most well-behaved golden retrievers I've ever seen in my life. She never barks at anyone, never runs off. She doesn't even chase squirrels. So normally I don't keep her on a leash when we're just walking down the street. Anyways, I start walking with her down our steps to the street. Just like any other night, it's about 9:30 p.m. and the sun is long gone. We usually just walk down the middle of the road because not that many cars drive through. Jessie's not on a leash, but right by my side as we round the top of the hill to go down. When all of a sudden, we see a woman walking towards us in the middle of the road. We're at the top of the hill, and she's about halfway up, staggering in this weird, unnatural sort of way. She was walking almost as if she was a ghost out of The Grudge or some horrible Silent Hill character. But when I first saw her, I wasn't really scared, just more worried if she was okay. I thought maybe she'd been hit by a car and one of her legs was broken, but she was moving along in a jilted but steady pace. She had long black hair and a dark dress. Her skin was pale in the street lamp's light. I didn't really know what to do or make of this scene. I just kind of stopped, stared at her, when suddenly Jessie started running towards her and barking like crazy. I've never seen her bark like this before. I honestly feel like if someone broke into our house, she'd just go up to them expecting to be pet. But here she was growling ferociously, almost like she was ready to strike. I chased after her, only catching up when she was right in front of the woman, basically barking in her face. The woman didn't react at all. She didn't jump, didn't put her hands out. She just stood there, staring at my dog. I bent down, grabbing Jessie by the collar to pull her back. I was maybe 2 feet from the woman. I started apologizing profusely, but when I turned my head up to look at her, I stopped. I'm crouched down, looking up at her with the street lamp shining down on both of us. She slowly turns around and looks towards me without saying anything, and I immediately see it. She doesn't have a face. Not in the her features were all mixed together or washed out way. She literally doesn't have a face. It's complete blackness, like looking into the sky and staring at the blackness between 2 stars. I can see her hair, I can see her neck, but I can't see a single feature between. A void. I looked into it, stopped dead mid-apology as she looked down back at me without a word. After a few seconds of just staring at each other in silence, she turns away and looks back forward, commencing to walk again. I let go of my dog's collar, more in shock than anything, and immediately Jessie runs away to the other side of the street. Chasing after her, I catch up and grab her collar again, on the sidewalk now. It couldn't have been more than 3 to 5 seconds, but holding my dog again, I turned to look back at the woman, and she disappeared. At the rate she was walking, it should have taken her at least 30 seconds to get to the top of the hill. But there was nothing. She completely vanished. At the time, this was oddly the most unsettling part for me. What just happened? Did it even happen? My dog had reacted to her too, so I wasn't the only one who saw her. Slowly, I took Jessie the rest of the way down and watched as she ambled around the field. The whole time I kept looking over my shoulder, deeply afraid that something was going to sneak up on me. All night, I became more and more bothered by what happened, trying to rationalize it away. Maybe the way her hair fell blocked the light, but I would have seen something. The tip of her nose, part of her mouth, but there was nothing. I'm not religious, and the logical part of me doesn't believe in ghosts. I don't even know. I still don't quite believe in spirits, but I genuinely can't explain what happened that night. When I was in 8th grade, back in 2015, I lived at Fort Carson, a military post in Colorado. The house we lived in was pretty normal for military housing. Nothing really felt strange or creepy about it. It was your regular 4-bedroom home in a small neighborhood of identical houses. I'd already lived there for a few years and had nothing out of the ordinary happen. My family, if they did experience anything, never told me, except my younger brother. My brother is the youngest out of me and my siblings, and was only 4 at the time, so whenever he would talk about things that scared him at night, I just assumed it was his imagination. A year before we moved out of the house, my brother would often wake up in the middle of the night and scream and cry as if he was being hurt. The first time it ever happened, the whole house ran to his room to see what was wrong, but he was just in bed pointing at the door screaming. He said that he saw a monster in the doorway. At first, we all thought he had a bad dream or had an active imagination. However, almost every week after that, at least once or twice, he would wake up and do the same thing. I've always had a huge interest in things that are paranormal or strange, so after a while I became curious to see if he really was seeing something. One night, in the middle of the summer, while I was playing Battlefield 4 with some friends, I got up and went downstairs for a snack run. When I returned to my bedroom, I thought about what my brother would say about his doorway. Me and my siblings had our bedrooms on the 2nd story of the house. My room was directly across from the stairs, and to the left of my room was a long hallway with a bathroom between mine and my sister's room, then my brother's room at the end. Before I sat back down to continue playing, I decided to check on him and look down the hallway to his room. Standing in his doorway was a tall figure that almost didn't fit there. The top of its spine was pushed up against the door frame, and I could only see the bottom half of its head. It had pale skin and backwards legs, like a goat, except they were human legs. It was facing the inside of my brother's room, towards his bed. I stared for a few seconds before I went back to my room and shut the door. What I saw shook me up, but I reassured myself that I was probably seeing things, as all day I had been watching ghost videos and listening to creepypastas. So I decided to take another look. I wish I didn't. This time, the thing was facing down the hallway, staring right back at me. Its face had almost no features, except for dark holes for eyes, and its arms hung almost all the way down to the floor. I froze, and immediately felt sick. And after what felt like an eternity, I pulled my head back into my room and shut and locked the door. My brother didn't wake up that night, and he later would be afraid of my bedroom too, even during the day. I never left my room at night until we moved out of the house, and I didn't tell anyone about it for a few years. I still think about it from time to time, but often doubt what I saw was real.